Gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
I have an amendment at the desk, Mr.
Clerk
Chair.
will report. Point of order reserved by the gentleman from Arizona.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature.
Without objection, the amendment be considered as read. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want people to understand what's going on here today. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are continuing their obsession with being in your kid's pediatric appointment. I find it insulting and creepy, and it's astonishing that we are allowing this even to come before the committee today. It's an attempt to interfere with your healthcare decisions for your kids. Essentially, what's going on here is they want to criminalize healthcare. These are decisions that should be made by doctors, by parents, by trans young people, not by, with all due respect, by Mr. Jordan, the chair of the committee, or by any other member of this committee. And we've been in this committee hearing today talking about the incredible amount of federal crimes on the books, and yet we are sitting here talking about adding another one for no good reason. As I alluded to earlier, this has absolutely no business in front of the committee. We have other really important work to do here, whether it's on prescription drugs, whether it's on lowering the cost of insulin, or, as my colleague said from the state of Washington, pushing back against incredible corporate greed and corruption in healthcare. These are all things worthy of our attention. In fact, these are the things that our voters want us to be focused on. But once again, no, we are here. We are beating up on trans kids and their families, and we are trying to criminalize doctors and parents. My amendment strikes the bill's prohibition on providing health care to trans youth. That's what we're talking about. We do not need to be criminalizing doctors or parents for doing what they feel like is in the best interest of the child. We need to be focused on things that our constituents are clamoring for, which is protecting Medicaid, which is making sure people have health care and food assistance. And it's frankly pretty incredible that we're here today doing this just a few weeks after, as far as I can tell, every single member except for Mr. Massey over there voted to kick some of their constituents off Medicaid and by extension shut down rural hospitals as they lose those Medicaid dollars. And if you think that we won't all be impacted by massive cuts to Medicaid, you're wrong. It will impact the doctors, the hospitals, the communities. And this isn't new. We know that this is something that President Trump went after in his first term, proposed cuts to Medicaid. That was the plan. It continues to be the plan. And if you think you won't be impacted by Republicans wanting to make medical decisions for your kids and for your family, you're wrong too. My Republican colleagues have no business being in the doctor's office with your kid. Now, this bill is an attack on parents and doctors and on kids. This bill would throw parents in jail if they help their transgender child access evidence-based treatments. Throw doctors in prisons for providing medically necessary life-saving care to transgender youth, care supported by every major medical association in the United States, and strip parents of their right to make medical decisions about their own kids' health care. I mean, really. This is what requires our attention today. We've sunk this low. We've sunk so low to jailing parents for trying to do what's right for their kids. Parents and doctors already have to worry about state laws banning medical care for trans kids. This bill would introduce the risk of federal criminal prosecution for basic medical care. And let's not forget the hypocrisy of all of this, the hypocrisy of banning medical care for trans kids while permitting that very same care for everyone else. Apparently, my Republican colleagues don't have a problem with puberty blockers or hormone therapy, only with the trans people who need them in order to live. It's cruel, as many people have said today, it's cruel. And there's no medical evidence behind this bill. It is hatred, it is bullying, and it's rotten through and through. And this amendment strikes at one of the worst aspects of this truly reprehensible piece of legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and keep Republican congressmen and women out of your kid's doctor's office. I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Just very quickly, this bill does not add a new crime. It just simply amends an existing statute, as we've already talked about. And if you're going to use the word creepy, I think it's pretty fair to define as creepy bodily mutilations and chemical castration of minors. It doesn't prevent counseling. It doesn't prevent other treatment for so-called transgender youth, but it does prohibit bodily mutilations and chemical castrations, something that I believe many people, in fact, I'd say 80 to 90% of the people in this country agree with. But most specifically, I know that we have the support of Prisha Mosley, Chloe Cole, Amelia Schmidt, Laurel Herbert, Per Joseph, Annika Biggles-Lyson, and Simon Biamaya Price, all of whom signed this letter. I would ask unanimous consent for putting this letter in the record.
Without objection.
This is a letter from folks who have detransitioned after having gone through some of the things that we're talking about. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to support this amendment and speak to the underlying bill. You know, I love the title, Protecting Children's Innocence Act, because what a misnomer that is. You know, the bill does just the opposite. You actually protect a child's innocence by not bombarding them with adult ideology and ignorance and immoral calcification. Why don't we let our children figure out who they are on their own without us inserting our judgments onto them? How about this? Why don't we love our kids? Why don't we love our kids and trust their parents to let them figure out who they are, who they want to be in this world? I am struck by the fact that we're actually talking about genital mutilation and trying to prevent that from happening when, hey, we were trying to do that in our Foreign Affairs Committee with USAID, because there is real genital mutilation happening on young girls, mostly young girls, in other countries around the world. But you know what? We cut that funding, pun intended, and yet we're here talking about it. When this is something, I mean, if it was so prevalent that young kids were being snatched and taken into doctors' offices and all these crazy medical things were happening to them without their parents' consent, that would be on the news 24/7. And it's not happening. This bill is continuing to push a false narrative about something that, quite frankly, we should be talking about the cuts that Republicans just passed to the medical community. You know, we're going to be dealing with hospitals and doctors closing their doors because of the cuts that you all passed. We're going to be dealing with our grandmothers not being able to get their Medicaid benefits because of what you just passed. You know, what about folks who are trying to get fertility treatments? Well, they're not going to have access to any of that because of what you all have been doing. And then how is any of this going to be interpreted or even enforced? We have been ricocheting in this committee today around states' rights. You know, it's wholly inconsistent. 2 weeks ago, like no states' rights when you want to have a national, carry law, everybody can get a gun, boom, boom, shoot them up. And then it's state laws, only, I guess, when it fits your narrative. This right here should not be debated in this committee. It should be left to states, and it should be left to the parents. There are legions of young people who are living in a gray area as they figure out who they are. Heck, there are legions of adults and even some congressmen and women living in the gray area. Give them space, but don't criminalize them or prevent them from getting the medical attention that they need. This bill goes after children and their parents and medical professionals. And then how does this thing get enforced, get interpreted? I mean, are we going to have goon squads? Are you going to have troops stationed at doctor's offices or in schools? In therapists' offices, yanking down kids' pants to see what they've had done or what they're preparing to have done? I mean, what kind of world are you trying to create and force us to live in? You know, I don't want you in my life. You probably don't want me in yours, which is why we shouldn't even be debating this bill, let alone passing this bill. And let me just say something else. I have run into so many members of the trans community, young people, adults, and you know where we meet? We meet in church. We meet at the farmers markets. We meet in the parks. We meet at family reunions. We meet in the grocery stores. And we are all talking about the same things, how we can live our own lives without people that we don't know, without people that we know want to harm us, who don't love us or care about us, coming up with crazy definitions about what a male is and what a female is. We want to live without that in our lives. So vote yes on the amendment and no on the bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Balint, for introducing this amendment that I think makes it clear the most common types of care young trans people receive are safe and medically necessary. And so I would once again turn to the American people and ask you, do you think that you or your doctor should be locked up for getting the care, getting your child the care that they need? For all the talk from the other side about big government staying out of people's lives, they want to get between you and your doctor. That's what this bill is about. This is Republicans in Congress forcing their way into your doctor's office and telling you that they know better than you, the parent, better than your doctor, about what medical care is appropriate for your child. And by the way, if you disagree with them, this bill allows them to lock you up for 10 years. And listen, if they can do this on this issue, they can do it on any issue. They can get between you and your doctor on any issue. And I'll go back to the truth that most U.S. medical organizations, through lengthy, independent review processes, back gender-affirming care, which normally involves therapy, puberty blockers, and hormone therapy. And let's remember too, as I said before, just because I think we got to repeat these things, trans children make up around 2% of minors in the United States. And out of this already very small population, only 11% are even prescribed hormone therapy. And that's with the advice and consent of parents and doctors. So we're literally over and over again talking about this tiny fraction of kids here, instead of talking about anything that's going to help your lives. For the vast majority of trans youth, care comes in the form of puberty-pausing medications. And I bet if I were to go through and do a little survey of all my colleagues on the other side and ask you to define what these are, you wouldn't be able to tell me. I bet you wouldn't be able to tell me, and feel free to come up and tell me later. Maybe the doctor in the front row would. These medications have been prescribed safely for both non-transgender and transgender kids for decades to treat a whole range of issues. They're well-researched, they're standard clinical care, and trans patients use them at exactly the same doses and for exactly the same reasons as their non-transgender counterparts. So this isn't like crazy treatment that's only used for one small group. This is actually treatment that can be used by everybody. And let's be clear, while the effects of these medications are reversible, Puberty can have irreversible effects on a young person's body, and these life-saving medications prevent trans young people from going through the wrong puberty and preserve their ability to make a choice down the road without any permanent impact to the body. Gender-affirming surgery, which we talk about a lot in all kinds of ways here on this committee, is so rare that a child in America is more likely to die from a gunshot wound than to receive that care. And I don't see a single bill being brought up in this committee that tackles the epidemic of gun violence against young people. To make this point abundantly clear, I want to read a testimonial from a parent of a trans child on what this care means to them. Alana says, "If not for the support and care my 14-year-old doctor received over the past 3 years, she might not be alive today. Before beginning gender-affirming care, my daughter would cry herself to sleep, feeling disconnected from her body and from herself. She often expressed a desire not to live and was overwhelmed by feelings of despair and alienation. Her mental health was fragile, and she seemed lost in a sea of confusion and pain. It was heartbreaking to witness her suffering and to realize how much she needed support. Since starting gender-affirming care, everything has changed. My daughter now presents fully as herself, confident and authentic. She is an engaged student and actively participates in band, roller derby, and cherishes her friendship. She has blossomed into a joyful, resilient young person who embraces her identity and her future. Her experience is a testament to the transformative power of acceptance and appropriate medical care, and it is a reminder that every young person deserves the chance to live authentically and happily." I proudly support your amendment, Ms. Balint, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question now occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Vermont. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Roll call being requested by the ranking member. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Klein? Mr. Gooden? Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Fry? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Knott? Mr. Harris? Mr. Onder? Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Schmidt votes no. Mr. Gill? Mr. Baumgartner? Mr. Baumgartner votes no. Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren? Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Mr. Cohen? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson votes aye. Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa? Ms. Scanlon? Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBath? Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Balint? Ms. Balint votes aye. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia? You're not recorded. Yes. Mr. Garcia votes yes. Ms. Kamlager-Dove? Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes yes. Mr. Moskowitz? Mr. Goldman? Ms. Crockett? Ms. Crockett votes yes. Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Fry? Mr. Fry votes no.
Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 10 ayes and 15 noes.
The amendment is not